You're listening to The Health of Business, where we talk openly and honestly about what it takes to run a healthcare clinic business in BC and Canada today. I'm Danielle Boyd, and I'm glad you're here. So I mean, obviously we've kind of connected through the WhatsApp group, but I'm really excited to actually just get to know you and get to know your business. So I'd love to just learn a little bit about you. Like, where are you from? What was your journey to becoming a physio?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm from Victoria originally. Pretty much grew up here and did my undergrad at UBC in kinesiology. I was on the rowing team there, so I rowed varsity. So athletics, sports has kind of been a big background for me. And that's kind of what led me to pursue physio. Well, actually, funny enough, in university, I had a lot of rib injuries. And it was more so chiro that helped me. Physio actually was kind of useless for me at the time, which is funny enough. But I knew there was more to it than what I guess how I was treated at the time. And so a lot of people in kinesiology wanted to pursue physio, and I was a little bit more stubborn in the sense of, well, I don't want to do what everyone else is going to do. So I was going to go more the academia route for a while. I had an offer to go to U of A to do my master's. It was on, I think, ACL tears and female soccer players, and a good scholarship and stuff for that. And then it was very last minute. I was like, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. Like, do I want to then do my PhD and get into teaching, and it's going to be kind of a long slog? Or, if I did physio and then I wanted to do academia later, then I can always come back to it. So very last minute, I think it was like 2 days before the application deadline, I was like, okay, let's apply to physio schools. Sort of like a little bit chaotic. So I applied to all the Ontario schools because it was a different deadline than BC. And then, I ended up getting accepted. I went on to University of Toronto. And so I moved over there and always thought I would graduate and work with athletes. That was kind of my background. And so I started working in a private clinic and working more with an athletic population. And I just got kind of burned out pretty quick in terms of the factory feel of like one after another. I just like my brain to jump from one. And we weren't even on a short model. It was 30-minute appointments. Like I know some of them are like 15, 20 minutes. Like I can't even imagine doing that. And I did my pelvic health courses and really fell in love with that. Just working with individuals with pelvic floor dysfunction that really affected their quality of life. And I found just within a couple sessions you can make such a huge difference really quickly, which was really rewarding. So once I started doing that, I started to get requests to go into the home. It was more those clients, they were on mat leave, couldn't, living downtown, didn't have a car, couldn't get to the clinic easily with a baby. So it was just by request, I kind of found the community home visits and I just fell in love with it. And I just found you can connect with people on such a deeper level and spend more time with them and get to know their families and their living spaces, and just felt my nervous system was just so much more relaxed coming out of those than in the clinic.
Interesting. That's actually super interesting. And you also get the patient like in such a real state. You're not in kind of this like manufactured space where you're, it's just not really homey. They're going to be so much more comfortable in their own nervous system and home as well. So super interesting.
Yeah, and people tend to share more in their homes than they do in a clinic setting. So I fell in love with that. And then when I moved back to Victoria, so I stayed in Toronto I was there for 7 years. And then I moved back. No one was really offering the in-home specifically for pelvic health. So I was going to kind of do it on the side and maybe work in a clinic. And then I was like, you know what, let's just try it out and see if I can go off on my own. And it started as me just wanting to work for myself, just like a solo practitioner. And then I got really busy really fast. And I was like, okay, well, do I keep this going or do I hire admin? And then it was like, well, if I hire admin, then maybe I should try to hire another physio. And then it was like, okay, well, maybe I should actually build a business out of this. And so it kind of just spiraled organically, I guess. And which I think was a harder way of doing it. than actually like starting with a business plan. It was more like, okay, it was like an evolution over time. So I think I probably made maybe a lot more mistakes, or I've learned a lot more. It was harder to go back and change things rather than like, starting with a business plan from scratch. But anyways, so that has led to where I am
Wow,
today and
that's
with
okay.
Core
So first
Connection.
of all, I mean, I think it's hilarious. I don't think I've ever met a physio whose journey wasn't that they like had an injury of some sort that like introduced them to it. I feel like that's like everyone had like some athletic pursuit and some injury and like introduction to the rehab space. And so I always get a good chuckle when I hear stories like that because it feels like such a, natural progression. And I am also in that group. So I relate to that UBC, kin, undergrad, and then, injuries and physio. And yes, I get it. So I love that. I think it's super
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Like the like, there's almost kind of like two ways of doing it where you sort of like fall into a business and it happens organically and you zigzag and you figure it out and then it like grows and does its thing. And then there's also this like, okay, I want to start a business. I'm going to plan it out. I'm going to, get the loans. I'm going to do the things to like, all the training, all the planning. And, I don't think it's like, I think there's no right, there's no wrong way of doing it. And like, it's almost like a real world MBA of sorts when you just sort of like do it, when you're like, hey, I have an opportunity, I found a unique gap in the market here, like let's just roll with it and figure it out as we go. And I think that's actually like such a great way to learn. And there's so many different ways of learning. And I feel like I'm someone who kind of just fell into a bit of a business and was like, oh, okay, this thing is growing, I guess I have to just sort of like figure it out. And you learn so much from those mistakes and from zigzagging and like just figuring it out. And I think it also makes you so much more relatable to your staff and to be like, hey, actually, I do kind of like see this from your perspective because I was here. And like, I think it's just, you're so much more, I mean, maybe not more or less, maybe it's just like this experience of actually like seeing it from your staff's perspective when you've been in that position and have actually had to kind of like zigzag to where you are. So, yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you. I'm curious now. Okay, so how long have you been running Core Connection? And you kind of started a little bit about the startup of it. Where is it at now? And how long have you been running it? What's the story with Core Connection? I know you're in Victoria and in Kelowna, and you yourself are in Victoria, correct? Yeah, and then you have a location in Kelowna. So yeah, so
Yeah.
tell me a bit more about the
Yeah.
actual business.
Yeah, so again, I guess going off on my own was about 6.5 years ago, 7 years ago. So it was really the first 2 years was kind of just me solopreneuring. And then I would say when people ask me this question, it's sort of like this and. So it's kind of been 7 years, but really Core Connection itself, because I was just operating under my name for the first little while, for the first couple of years. So it's been about 4 years where I've actually been, okay, let's pivot, let's make this a business, rebrand, like actually try to build out staff. So yeah, I'll call it 4 years. Core Connection's been kind of running and growing. Um, and yeah, we started in Victoria, and so that's where we're predominantly running. And then we also now have two, so a physio and kinesiologist in the Cowichan Valley. So Duncan, Shaminas, Ladysmith. So that started in this past summer. And then we have a physio in Kelowna. It's very early stages. We're just kind of testing the market there. Um, she was working with us in Victoria and moved to Kelowna. So it was sort of like a natural organic progression. Like, can we expand to Kelowna? Otherwise, we wouldn't naturally have gone there. But yeah, goal is to kind of spread up the island. We have 9 staff total. So um, 5 physios, 2 kinesiologists, and 2 support staff. And then we don't have a physical location, so everyone works remotely, which is awesome and has afforded a lot of flexibility for a lot of people, especially our client care and operations manager, Sydney. She's been with us for almost 3 years, actually. And she started because she was a student at UVic. And then she moved back down. She's American, moved back down to Colorado and worked there for a while and stayed on with us. And now actually she's in Europe
Amazing.
doing her master's. and she still works full time for us, just pivots the hours. She works in the evening, which is, daytime hours for us. And so the flexibility has really allowed her to kind of, continue on as
Yeah.
she's pursuing other
And
avenues for herself. So, and it's been amazing because we haven't wanted to lose her at
that's
all.
actually
She's
amazing. And
incredible.
how cool that you've been able to like build this thing using like remote people, and you've kind of like decentralized the whole thing, right? Like you're able to employ staff from all over because you don't have to actually, like, which is also speaks to like great team building, because now you're drawing from a pool of people who are, not necessarily in one location or one town. You're able to draw from like a pool of candidates who are, yeah, exactly, potentially in Europe, or yeah. And I assume you probably use lots of different tech tools. Are you guys using things like Slack and Zoom on the regular for your business? Mm.
Yeah, honestly, mostly email. We've experimented with Slack. I mean, we use Zoom a lot, of course, but I found the uptake of Slack wasn't very good. There's just so many apps. People are on WhatsApp and Slack and text and iMessage and email, and so we just kind of try to keep communication to one channel because then things get lost and confused and people are overwhelmed. So we mostly email and then
That's
phone and
like, and
then Zoom
sometimes what's the
meetings
expression,
as
like
well.
low tech, high touch? And I mean, obviously email and phone are like tech, but they're still like less techy than, introducing Slack or like some other platform. So yeah, sometimes keeping it simple and, super, super like clear and in one location is actually just the simplest thing. Sometimes keeping it simple is the best way to do it. So I love that. Are you practicing still then within that? Like, are you still performing mobile visits, or what's your role within the company at this point? Have you moved away from practice, or yeah, where's that at for you now?
Yeah, I still practice about 3 days a week. So I see about 15 clients a week. It was busier for a while because we were expanding into Cowichan. So I was going up there 1 or 2 days a week until I hired somebody on. But now back to, yeah, 3 days a week clinically, try to keep 1 or 2 days for just business development, business planning, meetings, networking, all that kind of stuff. I would like to transition back a little bit more because I find those Mondays and Fridays sometimes, 1 or 2 clients sneak in there too. Boundaries get
A
blurred, hard
hundred
time saying
percent.
no.
Yes, I get that.
So, um,
And that's like the like
yeah.
one of, well, I'm sure we'll dive into it,
Yeah.
but like that's also a huge part of just like the profession in general right now. Like physios are so in demand. There's so much. I mean, like therapists can get jobs everywhere. Like there's such a demand for physiotherapists. So it's like really hard when we have clients and like when we're running a business also to say no, because you're, needing to carve out time for admin tasks or development or whatever that you're looking for. It's really, really challenging to stay boundaried when, we have an industry that has like so many clients that are needing care. So I can resonate with that for sure. Why mobile? So obviously we talked and touched on this a little bit more. I'm curious about like, you spoke to the fact that clients are way more open and comfortable in their own homes. From a business perspective, I'm super curious about mobile. And I mean, we'll dive into this a little bit more too. I'm really curious about how like the logistics of it work and the planning with it, because you obviously have to factor in driving and whatnot. So I'm super curious about why mobile and why you've really leaned into that direction.
Yeah, it's just different and unique, and again, the way that I experienced it, it really helped with that feeling of burnout, and I find it tends to attract physios who have been practicing for a while and are looking for a change of pace. So most of the physios that work with us, yeah, have been practicing for a while and are just looking for a change of pace and are a little bit more burnt out maybe by the clinic environment. And so, yeah, just sustainability of your practice and work-life balance and, just taking care of yourself and being able to give, yourself to your clients. It's such, when you're in a giving profession, that emotional labor, cognitive labor is so high. And I just found for myself, it felt more sustainable. And so I wanted to create a work environment for others that they could experience that as well. Because a lot of us start this profession as a physio and we love it, right? And a lot get, fall out of love with it very quickly. And so I just, yeah, I You're not alone. Yeah, I've had my moments too. And so that's what kind of keeps me going is I just want to create this work environment where people feel valued and supported and they love coming to work and they don't, I mean, we all have our good days and bad days,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's sustainable for
and
people,
I'd
right? And they
imagine
can
like when
continue
you're driving place to place,
to
like you
show
get
up.
a moment between patients to actually decompress when you're driving, or you're, it might only be a 10-minute drive or a 15-minute drive, but there's something to be said about like having time between patients. I think like for me personally, the burnout was like every half an hour someone new, and then you're having to like energy match different people, right? Like you might have someone come in who's got a concussion, so you have to be like super low energy, and then you've got someone who's like a super chatty, like way up here kind of person, and then the next one that comes in is like, someone elderly who's moving, and you're just constantly like over here, up here.
I'm feeling I'm feeling exhausted just listening to you.
And
Yeah.
I think having, I think
Yeah.
there's something also about when you are the one entering someone's space, you're the one who gets to leave that space, right? Whereas when someone's entering your space, you don't have as much control about when they leave. And so you kind of always end up with this like door jam conversation and like more questions. Whereas if it's actually like you leaving the space, you can be better boundaried and be like, okay, great. Like, thanks a lot. I'm packing up, and you can kind of like use your body language to like help like exit and end the session a little bit more easily, perhaps, than when someone has like entered your space and you're kind of like, okay, come on, like I need to go see my next patient now. Like it's, and like that's kind of been more so my experience. But yeah, I find like that's actually super, I love that. Like I love the idea of like helping patients or like helping staff move away from burnout. So I'm curious about the mechanics of it. Like when you book a session, do you always have half an hour in between, or like how long is a session? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, most of our sessions are an hour or 45 minutes, and we automatically buffer 45 minutes into the end of every session. So if someone books online on Jane, for example, they can't book within that 45-minute window after. And so that's the allotted travel time. And that gets you pretty much anywhere in our territory. So we have a catchment area, and then we have an out of catchment area for each territory. So for Victoria, we have in catchment and out of catchment. And so out of catchment is, I don't know if you're familiar with Victoria, but it's kind of like Sydney, North Saanich, up by the ferries, and then Souk, East Souk, so out kind of Juan de Fuca. So we will serve those areas, but we charge extra. And then we usually allot a little extra travel time. So they're coded differently in Jane, they're booked differently in Jane. And so we've thought about doing kind of geographical areas because Victoria's getting busier and bigger and traffic is getting worse. And so sometimes even 45 minutes can be pushing, especially if you're running a few minutes over your last appointment. But generally speaking, 45 minutes is plenty. And then we also often override that. Like if we have two clients close together, then we'll just manually override it so that there's only, 15 minutes or 30 minutes in between. So it's a little bit juggling. Again, Sydney, who does all of our scheduling, is amazing and she's on the ball and she's always looking through everyone's schedules and noticing if things need to be tweaked.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We also, yeah, also have the therapist kind of just, it's on them as well to keep track of their schedules. And if they're here and then here and then here, maybe people are pretty flexible. Totally. Maybe we can switch them. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not a perfect process, but how we are doing it.
Yeah, because that would be really challenging to have people book online and then be like, okay, so now I'm in Souk. I've got to go back into like, downtown Victoria, and then I have to go back out towards Souk. It's like, okay, so and that I feel like having online booking with it. Yeah. So you have to have someone literally like combing through the schedule, checking Google Maps, like looking at, and then considering time of day when traffic, like I feel like there's a lot of logistics to it, but you don't have a brick and mortar location. So you probably have a little bit more budget for, being able to hire people to be on top of this. And like, you can kind of like allocate things a little bit differently in terms of like, resource budgeting for that. So I would imagine, it's depending on, like where someone's going or what your needs are, you're able to kind of like assess for that and to allocate resources differently.
I mean, yes and no. That's a whole other topic of conversation. But you think, right? But we also have to pay our therapists a lot more because they're traveling. And so that has been a big challenge is trying to figure out compensation models and, fees to clients as well without overpricing us, because we're also doing lower volume than in a brick and mortar. And so, yeah, that's often what people say, oh, you don't have a physical location, so you don't have overhead. Like, oh, trust me,
Now
the
staff
overhead
and
adds
like
up.
the downtime is a huge like cost eater now, I guess. So, I mean, if you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear, like, do you have employees? Do you have contractors? Like, what does that look like? And how are you charging by the mile for travel, or is it included in the price of the appointment? Yeah. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we charge a flat rate per appointment. So we have a 45-minute rate and then a 60-minute rate. Unless we're working with ICBC, then we bill them travel time and mileage. Uh, we have a mix of contractors and employees. I started with strictly the contractor model, but have been moving a little bit more towards the employee model, and also kind of just trying things out as well and seeing how it works from a profitability perspective. And also just depending on the person. I don't like to offer an employee right off the bat because it's just challenging in our model, right? I want somebody to show that they can build a caseload and kind of maintain a caseload. And then it's usually, there's been more responsibilities added to their plate. Like one of our physios is a clinical manager now as well. So she is paid as an employee, but she has additional responsibilities outside of her clinical time as well. And then one of our kinesiologists is salaried now, but she's been with us for a couple of years and has really shown just this initiative. And she also wanted a little bit more stability and security. So that was a way to kind of incentivize her to grow. So it's been kind of just working with the person. Our contractor model is I've moved to a flat rate rather than a percentage. Because we've had to, as we're starting to grow, it's like, is our business healthy, like in terms of profit? And we have to keep kind of upping our rates to figure that out. And if there's a percentage based compensation structure, then there's no room for improving profit margins and therefore the health of the business, right? So we have moved to a flat rate per appointment to just allow for, if we have to spend more on administrative costs or other things that come up, then there's more wiggle room. So it's been such a journey and a work in progress, and I haven't figured it out completely, but
Yeah, and
trying
it's
out
super
all the
interesting because
models
it's
for
hard
sure.
enough, like when you run a traditional clinic, like brick and mortar, every half hour style, when you have a little bit better understanding of like, how many people are coming through your door. But like when you're running a mobile program, it's a completely different setup. It's a completely different model. Like you have to really, consider that, like the travel time and the rates and like the expenses are different, right? And so I think, and this is kind of coming back to that whole like zigzagging and figuring it out as you're building it. So I love that you're actually dabbling and playing with different models and seeing what works and figuring it out. And I think like a huge mistake that I made early in starting a business and contracting people was looking at, okay, what are my expenses? Great. Like, how much do I want to pay myself? Great. And then like taking that number, splitting it, and then giving everyone else everything. And there was no room for like rainy day / fund built into that, right? Because there are so many expenses that are hidden, like so many expenses that are hidden and we don't think about. And like, there's so many things that happen when you're like, oh, actually, like I need to hire a lawyer because I need to draft up a new waiver or a new contract, or I want to like have something done. And I didn't budget for that in my fee split. So now I'm going to have to personally like not pay myself as much in order to like have this thing done, or whatever it is. So I think like figuring it out and then having a built-in kind of like rainy day fund is such a big thing. But figuring out what your actual expenses are on the regular is such a challenging thing because they fluctuate. And especially when you're in a mobile situation, I'm sure they fluctuate regularly. So good for you. I mean, I think the fact that you're playing with it and figuring it out as you go is huge. And that's one of the best things we can do as business owners, really, is just like tinker with it and play with it.
Yeah, and I try to be so transparent with my team too. Like I'm learning, and I have such a collaborative leadership style. Like I really, yes, it's my company, but I really want everyone to feel like they have a say and a place. And yeah, at the end of the day, I might have to make decisions that's in the best interest of the business, but that everyone might not always understand. But I really value your opinion, your perspective, and like, I'm a human here with you, and I don't know everything, and we don't have business training as our background, so I've had to really seek that out elsewhere. And as I get more knowledge, things do have to change sometimes, and that can be hard, right? When you have people who've been with you and they've started a certain way, and then things do have to change because it's just not
Right.
sustainable to
And
keep
then that
things
leads to
the
like
way that
so
they
many
are.
hard
Yeah.
conversations. And it's, like I find running a business is like, one of the more challenging emotional and like personal aspects for like your own personal development and growth because of that, right? Like you develop these relationships with people and, also while, trying to maintain the interests of a business too. Like it's a really, really challenging thing. And so I appreciate when you say like I'm super transparent and that's your leadership philosophy. So I'm actually interested to like dive into that a little bit more. Like what has sort of been, would you say, like the biggest challenges in terms of being a leader with the business? I assume probably some of these like decisions that you have to make on behalf of the business, but I'm curious about like, your view on that transparency and the soft skills, and yeah, just like what is your view on leadership and running a team?
Yeah, it's putting people first. And I mean, I think one of my downfalls as a business owner is I'm such a people pleaser and such a giving person. Like, I wish I could just like pay everybody the moon, right? And, didn't have to worry about these things. But I think there's a lot of positives to that because I care so much about the people that work with me, and I want them to feel valued, and I care about them, and I want them to feel that because I mean it's just, yeah, human connection and feeling like you have a place of belonging in life is so important. And we spend so many hours of our life working. And if you don't feel like you're supported or valued in your workplace, like that just negatively spills over to your entire life. And so that is number one for me is just, yeah, people first, and making sure that they feel valued and they have a say at the table. And again, collaboration. So collaborating, asking opinions, getting people to come to me with answers rather than me telling them the answers. And yeah, I've had to also be like, well, okay, sometimes I do actually maybe have to step up and make the executive decisions, but I don't think it's harmed me necessarily. In that way, and it's just how I want to be treated too, right? I really value autonomy, and in the clinics I worked at earlier in my career, I just learned from those. I didn't really feel important, I didn't really feel like I had a say, and I think everything's negotiable. It's just, let's sit down and figure it out together, right? And we might not be able to get there right away or overnight, but like if this is something that you really want, let's come up with a plan to
I
get
love
there
that. I
together so
love
it
that.
works for
And I
both of
think like,
us, right?
in
Works for
addition to
everybody.
that, like when you do have to make an executive decision, at least explaining how you got to that answer or why you went there is a huge part of that too. So I love that. And I know that you've had really good retention with your staff as a result of that. So that's like amazing. I think you've clearly built really incredible trust and value within your staff. So kudos to you on that. Do you use like, so obviously it's a bit of a different business model than your traditional brick and mortar, but what would you like, what are kind of the things that you indicate as like a healthy business to you? Or like, do you use any traditional KPIs, or do you like, how do you measure the success or the health of your business?
Yeah, not something that I've done very well in the past, but something that I've really worked hard on in the last like year and a half, I would say. And so I'm tracking a lot more consistently than I have. So I look at gross profit margin, I look at net profit margin, I look at percent net profit of gross profit. That's a big one. I don't know if you know Greg Crabtree, but in terms of the health of a business, those are big ones. So that's just from a money side. I look at, yeah, I look at a ton of
Mm.
KPIs, but I don't weigh them all equally, and I don't even bring them up with a lot of people. I just like to have a finger on the pulse. A big thing, like I really value client-centered care, and so I've worked in a clinic where it's been all about the numbers, and that does not jive with me, and that's never been my philosophy. But I have to look at them, I have to track them, and I think they just give you
Yeah.
a bigger picture of what's going on. So I do look at,
Mm.
percentage of schedule filled. So productivity, I guess. I look at the I track number of Google reviews per client. I look at the internal per therapist. I look at the internal Jane rating for each therapist. I look at number of appointments, number of new clients. Like I kind of every month I pull all of those reports. And I don't think there's one that I necessarily value over the other. It's just a bigger picture of how things are going. And every quarter, we send all of these reports out to our therapist, but we don't sit down and we go through them. It's really low pressure. I'm like, here are your numbers. And, it's for you to reflect on your practice and let me know if you want to talk about them. But I'm not actively going to be like, oh, why is this down
Yeah.
this month or this quarter, right? But if we're seeing general trends, then okay, yeah, let's have a conversation about it. Or yeah, so it's that's a work in progress, I would say, but I really value client-centered care. And so traditional
Mm.
KPIs have just felt ick to me. And so it's not something that I
Yeah.
even really actively discuss with my staff because I believe if you feel supported and valued in your workplace and we've hired well and you align with our values as a company, you're going to do good work, your clients are going to love you, and you're naturally going to be busy and
100%.
build a
I
case.
love that.
So
It's almost like you're
that's
using
my
the KPIs as just like
philosophy.
an outcome measure. Like you're like, okay, great. What's the input here? The input here is like quality patient care. And if the patients and clients feel supported, they feel valued, they feel like they're getting good care and they're, progressing through their treatment plans, like the outcome is going to be those like, those numbers and those markers on the KPIs. But yeah, it doesn't have to be this thing where the input is like a financially motivated structure. It's actually the input is just quality care and noticing when those trends are decreasing. It's not necessarily because they're like, maybe the staff are not thinking from a KPI perspective. Maybe there's actually something happening in that person's life that needs to be supported or addressed. It doesn't necessarily mean that like their performance or their sales are down. It might just mean that maybe they haven't been themselves lately and are not, able to relate to their patients as easily. So I really like that. I like it as like, okay, I've got a pulse, like I've got a finger on the pulse. I see what's happening and then looking for trends and then maybe identifying what the input is from a more like human connection standpoint.
Yeah, it's so hard, I find, to measure the client-centered care piece. Like I look at internal review ratings on Jane, Google reviews, and I know, some physios and clinics use like plans of care and, satisfaction and surveys, but a lot of people don't fill out surveys. And it's just like, yeah, I'm always curious to hear what people are doing to measure more of the client satisfaction side of the KPI, because I find it's been hard to pick a really good one or to have a really good one that is consistent and also accurate, right? Because client satisfaction surveys, most people don't fill those out
Totally.
anyways,
And
right?
do you find like,
So,
are you using the Jane like Google review or like internal review prompts after your sessions? Like, what does that look like? Like, how are you actually collecting that feedback from the clients?
yeah, so the Jane prompts, it gives an internal review. So you can see that. But again, a lot of people don't leave those. But that doesn't mean they're not satisfied. That just means they're busy and they don't do it, right? And it's yeah, the discharge piece, like a lot of people look at it, oh, client discharge, that's successful, but a lot of clients self-discharge, or you don't always know, maybe they've fallen off your schedule. And so that's so tricky, and we don't really use discharge in our practice anyways, of like, because a lot of clients have recurring issues where they need to come back again in the future, and so we
Yeah.
don't use that actual marker. And then the Google reviews, yeah, we played around with like an AI thing to text for Google reviews, but a lot of people thought it was kind of scammy or it was a spam. So we stopped doing that. So yeah, I would love to hear from others what client satisfaction tools they use, because I don't have a good one. And I'm not going to come on here
Well, and
and
it is,
pretend that
you're
I do.
absolutely
So
right. Like this feedback
yeah.
is so important for us to help to like, curate the business and to like determine what services we need to offer and to modify and to give feedback to staff. Like that feedback and collection is so, so, so important. And yet you also want to respect, patient space and time and like not feel like you're bombarding them and asking for feedback. And so it's such a delicate balance, like finding a solution to getting the feedback that you need in order to tailor the services, while also not like making it feel like I'm getting text messages and emails constantly, like this is annoying. And then it almost like sours the relationship, right? So you might be delivering amazing patient quality care, but the only poor feedback they have is that they're getting too many feedback requests, right? So it's this like this really delicate balance. So I mean, I'm not going to pretend I have the solution to it. So I like, feedback from everyone else. Maybe that's something we could put out to the WhatsApp group and see what everyone is using there. That's actually a great idea. We'll report back. um, Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I'm curious to know, I mean, obviously we've talked a lot about your business and Core Connection and some of the amazing things that you've been doing and your values. I'm curious to see what your feelings are about the profession as a whole right now. I mean, obviously we're going through some really big changes in terms of agreements with insurers and regulation and government. And it's, like operating a business in a regulated space is very challenging. I'm curious to know like what you see as the biggest issues in our profession or in like allied health in BC and Canada as a whole are currently.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think affordability is one for patients. Insurance rates haven't gone up in terms of how much they're compensating. And I know, yeah, clinics across the province and the country, like since COVID, have had to drastically increase their fees. And also, it's this kind of spiral effect. Physios are also wanting more and asking more, and so that raises the ceiling, and then that eats into, can I even sustain a business? So then the rates have to go up. And so I think insurance needs to match better our rates so it's more affordable for those that do have insurance. Uh, and I think PABC is trying to advocate on a lot of that as well, which is great. That's one for sure, affordability. But then, yeah, also those that don't even have insurance, affordability. So there's some really amazing pelvic floor physios in BC who are trying to advocate in the public system for MSP to cover postpartum care. I think that should be
Yes.
standard, like it is in so many
Yes. Oh,
countries,
that would
right?
be
Yeah,
amazing. Like to see
yeah.
that as an MSP coverage, like, you know, pre and postnatal, you get X amount of sessions no matter what. Oh, that would be incredible and like something to definitely continue to press on the advocacy side. But yeah, I mean, the pricing piece is so frustrating, right? Like we have a business to run, we have expenses, which we've discussed as being very, very high when you run a business, and that's very, very challenging. And yet, in order to actually take in the revenue that we need to pay our expenses, we have to receive that from patients. And that's where it feels icky because it's like, okay, now these people who actually need the care that we're providing are the ones paying for services, whether they have insurance or not is a different conversation. And it's so, so challenging because in order to run the business and pay your expenses, you have to collect those fees, but you're collecting those fees from people who might not be able to afford it or to access it. And it's such a conundrum. And, it's interesting, like in conversation with the PABC CEO, Andrea, she came from dental hygiene and my sister's a dental hygienist. And so in their industry, they have a fee guide, like their association puts out a fee guide every year. This is what the cost of like XYZ services are. And then insurance companies pay in response to what that fee guide is. Whereas in our profession, like in physiotherapy specifically, and I believe across like chiro, RMT, etc., what's happening is we're setting our prices based on what the insurance companies are paying. So, if Pacific Blue Cross is paying $95 for a 30-minute session, that's what our clinics are determining to be their price point, instead of us being like, no, we should be charging, $130 for half an hour, and Pacific Blue Cross should be meeting us because that's what our fee guide has determined as our, like hourly rate. And so it's so challenging because we're very responsive to insurance companies, whereas actually we should be the ones that like are dictating our prices. But what then that means is we need to suddenly like increase our fees massively and then hope the insurance companies keep up. And guess who suffers? The clients, right? They're the ones at the end of the day paying a massive copay because now there's a huge difference, or it's double the cost of what their insurance company is going to pay. And we don't want to do that to patients, right? So it's such a conundrum. It's like checkmate right now. And so I don't know what the solution is. And I find it really, really like frustrating. And, like physios are in a really tough position. It's really hard to pay our overhead, collect reasonable fees, and then not gouge patients, especially those who don't have coverage. So I'm curious, and I know that you've started some really unique initiatives through your business. So yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit more kind of on your take there, but I want to also dive into some of the nonprofit work that I know that you've been doing, which I think is really, really beautiful and really cool. So sorry, bit of a word salad to throw at you there, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more on your elaboration on the fee piece and then what you've done as a result.
Yeah, I love to see that PABC came out with a fee guide just recently, because every year when I've gone to up our rates, I've looked for something that I can at least reference or, not justify, but communicate to clients like this is why and what's going on. And the latest one was from like 2019 or something like that, which was crazy. So, no, I love that. And I agree. I think insurance companies, yeah, I mean, I don't blame them if they don't see something from us, then how are they going to know to increase their rates, right? So I also agree, if we're going to complain about something, we need to do something about it as well, right? So at the end of the day, insurance companies are businesses and they have bottom lines too, and they're not going to just be kind and generous and just up their rates unless they're actually shown that they need to, right? So yeah, I think if you're gonna complain, you need to do something about it. So no, I was really excited to see that. And then also MSP, like it's still
and that hasn't gone up since like
per session or
2003.
something like that.
What? And the only people who can access that are people who are in like the lowest tax bracket too, right? So that's not a universal thing. Yeah, we haven't received much of a raise in a very long time. And like not since COVID either. And as we know, COVID drove expenses up massively. And all we've received in terms of insurance and MSP, or not even MSP, but just in terms of general increases, it's just like cost of living, inflationary increases, which is not equivalent to the way prices have like almost doubled and tripled in some aspects since the beginning of COVID. So yeah, we have not been keeping up with trends in the expense side of things. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah, agreed. The MSP fee, it's those that can access it probably can't even afford to pay the remaining amount of the appointment, right? So it's kind of a silly thing, to be honest. But I also, at the same time, like again, I can empathize, like government spending, and I just wish there was enough money for everybody in the world, but the reality is there isn't. And so it's, again, I try not to complain about these things, but rather like, okay, like how can we work with this? How can we be creative? How can we come up with
100%
new and novel ideas? So that's kind of led to the creation of the nonprofit that I started. It's called Victoria's Physical Rehab Society. So it's a separate entity from Core Connection, just for conflict of interest. We're not trying to set up a nonprofit to just help support our private company. It's open to everybody, starting in Victoria, but the goal would be eventually to expand across the province. So essentially my goal with it is, again, affordability. As I'm each year increasing our fees, I feel like I have to do something just, as a human to help, at least give back in some way to our community, to those that are getting, can't afford these increases or being, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but
they're being priced
essentially
out.
they can't afford it, right? Priced out. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Being priced out. And so, I mean, a lot of us, especially in the pelvic health world, because our rates and fees are so much more expensive for pelvic health, we recognize how unaffordable it is for so many people. And a lot of us do, as pelvic floor physios, we take on pro bonos, we take on a sliding scale. But inherently, no matter how amazing of a human you are, there's going to be some bias in that level of care, right? Like, you at the end of the day have to pay your bills as well as a physio. And so if you know that you're not getting paid your fair wage for this session, you might cut the session short, or you might not show up to 100% like you could. And no one really wants to talk about this, but the research shows that there is some level of bias in this. And so it's how can we have a way where the therapist gets compensated their full rate, and the client doesn't have to, can pay what they can afford essentially, or aren't left, with this massive bill. And so the goal is to create this pool of funding. So the nonprofit's not delivering physio care. It's just it's a funder, essentially like an insurance company. And anyone who meets the criteria, so considered low income or has extraneous circumstances or financial hardships, they can get referred to the nonprofit from a healthcare professional, so MD, PT, OT, RN, or midwife. And so it's a brief application form. They can apply on their behalf, and then the nonprofit matches the client to a clinic in Victoria, which is where we're starting. And then that clinic essentially is responsible. They take on the client. The physio does an assessment. And then, so we essentially approve for one assessment, and then the physio does the assessment and submits a treatment plan. So how many sessions does this client need based on the issue that they're coming in with? They submit the treatment plan and to the nonprofit, and then we approve or whatever, right? And so essentially they're approved for maybe 6 sessions. And then the clinic is responsible for billing MSP if they qualify for the $23. If they have any extended health insurance, the clinic is responsible for billing their extended health insurance. And the clinic's responsible for collecting a small fee. So it's $25 per appointment, because we feel that it creates some accountability. Again, human psychology.
Yes.
People don't value free services the same way, right? Yeah. So, and then the remaining amount gets billed to the nonprofit. So we're essentially like a third-party funder. Now,
I love it. So how are you funding it? Where are you getting, are you getting
this is the idea.
Donations? Are you funding it as a percentage of through your company of profit into the, how are you funding it?
Yeah, we haven't, it's been incorporated as a society in BC for the past year and a half, but we kind of fumbled for a while. I have some amazing friends who work in nonprofit who have been helping me out of the goodness of their heart and volunteering. One's a CPA who works with nonprofits, so she's helping with the financial side. And then one's been the executive director of many nonprofits, and she's just taken this under her wing and just ran with it. And it's been, I'm so indebted, so volunteer and work obviously is a big part of this. This is
great. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to have a board. As a nonprofit, you have to have a board of at least three directors in order to run. And so the first year we tried applying for grants, and we had it very broad. We were wanting to help anybody, essentially, who couldn't afford physio. And we realized it was just too broad. We got rejected from a bunch of grant applications. And so we've honed it down. And as of January, we're focused on just one program. It's a community pelvic health program. So we're focused on specifically women with pelvic floor dysfunction. And then now that we have sort of our goals and our vision and our direction, we can reapply for some grants now. And we've started fundraising. And so we have had some private donations coming in. And that's also, we're kind of targeting more private donors for right now. So we have a few meetings set up for that. And then, yeah, Core Connection has donated some money just to pay for like legal fees and stuff like that to start with. And then we're looking at transitioning we have this other program with Core Connection called Every Baby Born. We're looking at transitioning that to maybe supporting the nonprofit.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about Every Baby Born, because I know that was another initiative that you'd started there. And then I'm curious about how you, like, what the future of these two programs look like.
Yeah, so Every Baby Born, we started it, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember off the top of my head. But again, a way of kind of giving back to the community, because community is one of our core values, my core values, and also the company's core values. And so for every client that we see as part of our perinatal program, so in pregnancy and postpartum, if we see them at least once in pregnancy and twice in the postpartum period, we donate $50 in their baby's honor, so baby born's honor, to the Victoria Best Babies, it's a perinatal nutrition program for low-income families. So we knew we wanted to have some sort of initiative and give back in some way, and the Best Babies was sort of one that seemed kind of close enough to what we were doing and what kind of our goals were. And they specifically work with low-income families. So that's been running. So we donate $50 for basically every baby that's born, under our care. Right, we've worked with our mom or helped support the mom through the pregnancy and the birth of this baby. And so that's been really awesome, and people, really love that. But again, we might transition. We'd love to keep both running, but we might transition that to the nonprofit, especially if our program running right now is pelvic health.
Wow, good for you. So obviously, solutions. This is what, we're like talking about fees and challenges, and you've like created a unique solution, and that's really incredible. And I think anyone who is maybe listening to this and wants to donate should. Yes.
Yeah, we can put the link in the little promo. Put the link
like 100% will put it all in there, because I think that's a really incredible thing that you're doing. And, you almost feel a little bit more like, okay, like yes, we are charging a higher fee. We increase our fees every year. People are getting incredible value. Clearly they're getting people who really, really care on their team. And you're giving back within that too. So I think that's a really beautiful circular, model that you've created. I love it. I think congratulations. Like, honestly, what you've done is really, really cool. And I think I really hope you're like super proud of yourself and your team, because this is really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it's still very early stages of the nonprofit. It feels like we've been going for a while and don't have much to show for it yet, but we're sticking with it and we believe in it. And I was advised before I started this, I spoke to a few and they're like, don't start a nonprofit. If you can find another way to do what you want to do, just do it. And I was like, how hard could it be? Like, just incorporate a society overnight.
Figure it out as you go. Zigzag on the journey. It's like, it's all part of it, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, learning as you go is the best. Like, that's the best learning. I mean, it's like doing a project, and like you're picking up so much great stuff along the way. And I think so many people, and myself included, like, there's so many things that we do and we look back and we're like, if I had known that was going to be that hard, I never would have done it. So sometimes almost just like jumping in and doing it is the best thing we can do, because sometimes if we know and we do too much research and like understand it a bit too much, we're like, oh, this thing is actually really hard and scary and I'm not going to do it. So I think like jumping in and doing it, you're, like looking back, you might be like, oh, I probably would have done that a bit differently, but like you did it.
Working on it for sure. Yeah. Again, so grateful for the people on the board, and they've kept me going, because I may have reported a while ago. But I hope that it's it has something to show for itself when we're able to start supporting 100%. People.
And that like 0 to 1 is always the hardest phase, like just getting up and running and like getting the flywheel going. Once it's in motion, then, like I'm sure it'll kind of operate a little bit more like seamlessly, but it's always getting that flywheel in motion. That's the most challenging part of it. So it seems like that's like kind of the phase that it's in, and it will continue to pick up and to get moving. So I think that's really cool. And obviously, you've spoken about having an amazing team and being like lifted and inspired by working with your team. So I think that's just, again, a point to like how great you are at building trust and communication and like collaboration with your team around you, whether it's your board or whether it's your staff. I think that you've done a really great job of developing relationships. And I think that that is really the biggest thing that indicates the health of a business is really strong relationships. I'm curious to know a little bit more about like overall, how would you define like what does a good, strong, healthy business mean and look like to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think relation like the health of the workplace. So it's a healthy, safe, happy workplace. Sounds so cheesy, but just non-toxic workplace. It's inspiring. It's motivating. People are happy to show up to work there. They feel like they're part of the company and the company's invested in them, invested in their growth, their future. They can see a future. Like, I think that the people side is honestly the number one. And then obviously the financial side, like that's something that I think I put more emphasis on the people in the past. And I'm really, yeah, I have some mentors, and I'm part of an amazing program in town that has taught me to really hone in on the financials. And you just, yeah, it's better for everybody involved because the better the company is doing, the healthier financially the company is, the more you can invest in people as well, right? Like you can offer more programs, you can offer more fun activities, you can, give them bigger bonuses, you can, do more things, bigger
Yes.
professional development funds, all these things. So I think it's something I haven't paid as much enough attention to, but am really learning and starting to.
I
And so
really
it's
love
those
that.
two
And I
things, I
think,
think.
I think building the relationships first and having that transparency and those like strong conversations to develop that trust and like, integrity amongst the team. And then building on top of that to build profit, I think is like huge. And the intentions that you're talking about with the profit is so cool. It's not about like just making a ton of money. It's about making good money so that you can reinvest back in that team. Like that's actually at the end of the day, it comes back to
Yeah.
people again too, right? And then having the goals and the values attached to that, financial side of things, I think is like it's full circle and everyone's happier when they right, like, and I mean
Such a good
it's
point.
what you're doing, so I think that's really
Yes.
great. And not only reinvesting back in your staff, you're reinvesting back in the community with the nonprofits and with everything else that you're doing. So like, wow, I'm like super, super blown away and really impressed. And I think that you've done some really incredible things. So, congratulations. I would love to kind of hear, what are you optimistic about in the profession? I
Thank
mean,
you.
I think especially in our like, our WhatsApp group, like all the clinic owners, there's a lot of frustration and a lot of stuff going around. I would love to kind of like, wrap up on a note of optimism and like, what are you excited about in your business and in the profession moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm as kind of cynical as I maybe sounded around this nonprofit a little bit. I am very excited about the idea. Like, I do feel like we're getting closer, and I would love like that. I'm super excited about to be able to just start advertising that we can accept those referrals and we can start supporting people. Again, within our company, but in all clinics across, we're opening it up to all the clinics across Victoria to start with. So yeah, I'm really excited about that to be able to just, yeah, unique creative ways of doing things really excites me. And I like the thought of, okay, well, there's been this problem that we're all complaining about, but can I at least, even small, it's going to be such a small scale, but on some small scale, can I be somewhat of a solution to it or at least help chip away at it? So that I'm super excited about. Yeah, I'm excited. Our team is growing slowly and just it's yeah, I just love them all so much. They amaze me every day. They're all just so incredible and they inspire me to kind of keep going and just what they bring to the table and the initiative they take. And yeah, so just being able to add more amazing people to my team, and I find they make me a better leader as well. So yeah, just learning from others, and I just love people. Like, I love what everyone brings to the table and their uniqueness and
So
their
good.
skills and qualities.
I'm so pumped for you. I think you're doing some really cool things. So thank you so much. Where can people find Core Connection and as well as the nonprofit? Like, how can people reach out to you if they want to either like book in with you, if they want to work with you, if they want to donate? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so our website is coreconnectionphysio.com. And then our nonprofit website, so it's called Victoria's Physical Rehab Society, or we call it VPRS for short. And the website is Physical Rehab Society.
I will link all that in the show notes and everything with that too. So, Lauren, thank you so much. Is there any other like parting words or advice you would want to give to like anyone looking to start a business before we let you go?
No, but I think the piece I was just thinking as you were talking about the finance side, and just I think that's something I've always been hesitant to talk about because I don't want it to come across as like, oh, I'm trying to make all this money for myself, right? And I think a lot of us are maybe in a similar mindset, just being in a helping profession, especially as physio-owned businesses. But again, something that I've been being taught by mentors who are also in healthcare businesses. It's better for everybody if your business is profitable and running well, right? And again, that's not lining your pocket, that's going back into the investment of the company and making it better for everybody involved. And especially if you come at it from, the right mindset and perspective and being collaborative. It's like everybody has a say in where this money goes as well, right? And so I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. Well, here I am talking about it on a podcast, but we're comfortable talking about this, right? Because it is, it's better for everybody involved to have a nice,
exactly.
Stable,
it's not like you're trying to carve out a bigger piece of the pie for yourself. It's about making a bigger pie for everyone.
Yeah,
I love
for everybody.
that. And I mean, the same goes with marketing too, right? Like if people don't know your services exist, how can they actually, like I remember listening to a podcast, I can't remember who it was. It was like an online marketer, but essentially she said, you're robbing people of the ability to like receive your amazing services if you're not selling yourself, or if you're not selling your business or marketing your businesses and services. So I think it's kind of that same concept. If you're not trying to grow the company and to have more cash flow, you're not serving your staff and your clients and providing more of that pie to everyone. So I really appreciate that. And I think you're right. Having these conversations is so important. Like, as physios, I think we've been really like, you're right. Service. A lot of us went into this profession to be of service. And I do think it's important to talk numbers and reality and, actually get into kind of the depth of what it takes to run a business. So I really appreciate your transparency and talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I always felt like it was one or the other, right? Like at least when I experienced when I first started practicing, it's like, okay, it was so numbers driven and, these big corporations, it's all about the bottom line, or it was like, oh, all service based but no conversations about money. Right. And so it's like, can we bridge those two together?
Yes. And I'm all for it. I love it. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's like, that's my philosophy as well. So I totally resonate with you. Thank you so much. I know you have a hard stop here in a few minutes, so I will let you go. And massively, again, thank you so much. I can't wait for people to listen to you and to discover more about you and your business. So much gratitude.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you.
That's it for this episode of The Health of Business. If you're navigating any of these challenges in your own clinic, know that you're not alone. If you're interested in working together on any of these challenges in your business, head to danielleboyd.ca to learn more about my consulting offerings and to get in touch. Catch you next time on The Health of Business.